Chapter 3. Courtney Zeetzy sat in the last seat of the last row. She was the girl who I thought could easily be in clothes catalogs. Someone should pick her to be in them, posing with one hand on her waist, which was just the right size, and the other one flung up behind her as she pretended to walk. She'd be wearing all new clothes, a t-shirt never worn until 5 minutes before, and flip-flops and shorts with flowers on them. Maybe there would be a breeze blowing through her hair as she tossed her head back, but turned just a little to look at you. Courtney was beautiful. She had dark, almost black hair, and her skin was sort of creamy white. She didn't have freckles or the pimples and blotches that Darlene Roberts had, who was 3 desks in front of her. Darlene might even have been pretty good-looking if not for that, but in a different way. Plus, Darlene sometimes squeezed her pimples in the laboratory. You could tell, because when she came back, the skin around them was suddenly pink, like the spots on Jeff's shirt. You could also tell she was sad about her pimples and mad that she had them. But Courtney was perfect. When I looked over, she was bending back up from putting something under her seat. A wave of hair went loose at that moment and fell from behind her ear across her cheek. It was like a splash of something. I almost looked away as if it were a private thing, but I didn't. The ceiling light flashed right off her hair and made it shine like a wall of dark water or something. The shine of her hair amazed me, but that was just one thing. I also knew that the smell of it was awesome. One day last year, in Sister Robert Marie's 6th grade, I was able to move up a reading level because some of the books my mother kept pushing on me finally helped. My mom was so glad, and so was I. Mostly because moving up that late in the year meant that no matter how bad I did, there wouldn't be enough time to drop me back down again. I'd begin 7th grade on a pretty good level. I wasn't a good reader, at least not to begin with. All through 1st and 2nd grade and part of 3rd, I was in the lowest group. My brain almost used to switch letters around when I tried to read, and the whole thing made no sense. Because St. Catherine's classes were small, everyone knew you were in the dumb group. Maybe Courtney didn't ever call it that, but whenever people moved up, Sister Robert Marie tried to make them feel better by announcing that they were moving up. "I hope you'll welcome Tom," she said that day. "Tom Bender is moving up." "From the dumb group," Jeff whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, because he stayed behind when I moved. And anyway, last year, for a couple of weeks at least, I was at the same table as Courtney. The first time when she took the seat next to me, I caught a little scent of her in the air that moved when she sat down. That was it. That's what really started it with her. That time she sat down, gosh, it was like the smell of fruit or something. It must have been the shampoo she used. It was faint, but smelled like peaches and apples. Maybe that's what it was called. Peaches and apples. Whatever it was, it filled up the space around her. Being so close to her was an unbelievable thing. If I ever sat behind her in class, which I never would at St. Catherine's, I don't know if I could ever get any work done. I would be leaning forward all the time and smelling her hair. I nearly fell into a trance at the table that day. But when Courtney began to read parts of the book she had chosen for the group, she spoke so clearly and with all the ups and downs in her voice that helped you understand what the characters were feeling, that I almost couldn't bear it when she stopped and Kayla began to read. Courtney seemed so excited at the exciting parts too. It all just blew me away. She really was perfect. She was beautiful, of course. I knew that just by looking at her. But the moment she started to read, I knew she was really smart too. Since then, since that afternoon on the bus, at night before bed, I began to think of ways I could save her life. I couldn't be the only one who did that. I couldn't be. There wouldn't be all those adventure stories and comic books and movies and TV shows with all their action and life-saving going on if I was the only one, would there? Maybe it was from reading Jeff's comics in the afternoons, or thinking about being in the Cobra, or not being out there enough and having too much time alone. But I thought about saving Courtney's life nearly every day. This is how it worked. It could be just an ordinary day, like today at school with the teachers and books, and milk cartons and the smell of lockers and backpacks all around me. I would suddenly sense that Courtney was in danger, and I would have to rescue her. For instance, Courtney and I would be the only ones at school, left behind because of something with the buses being done and it was late or we were late, then I would see her at her locker reaching for the top shelf and looking up into the back of it. Suddenly the walls would begin to shake, the ceiling would rattle, and the floor tiles would start popping up out of the floor. Pop! Pop! You could see them shooting up, silhouetted in the big square of light coming from the end of the hallway. I'd seen that light a million times before, only this time the tiles were popping right up into it. Pop! 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 I knew right away what it was. Earthquake! I yelled, running to her locker. Her hair was moving in a wave as she turned herself to the light, then back to me. Ignoring the danger to myself, I pulled Courtney by the waist down the hallway toward the light, but as far as it actually was from our lockers to that doorway, it now seemed totally endless. Pop, 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 pop! We ran faster. Now the fluorescent ceiling lights began exploding one by one above us. The floor opened and huge cracks appeared. A cloud of steam and flames burst up out of the ground under the school. I knew it! The center of the earth! I said angrily. It was just a matter of time. She looked at me, her eyes so wild. But Tom, I shook my head. Just come with me. Dancing over the widening cracks, holding her closely, I drew her toward the doors to safety. We plunged through a small gap of daylight just as the walls thundered down behind us. Standing next to her, breathing hard as the police and fire engines and ambulances roared up around us, my arm still around her waist, I turned and smiled. First period tomorrow was going to be a little tough. She fainted then, but I caught her moving my other arm swiftly up under her knees.